and welcome to today's workshop featuring a winter's visit, both the Minecraft Studio and the SVG version. What we'll be doing in today's workshop is showing you on Minecraft Studio how we can build a whole beautiful wintry scene and how we can then embellish those using the SVG files as well. So let's take a little look at the sort of scene we will be creating. We'll be doing this in both a home decor project and also showing this can be then replicated for a card as well. And just look at that beautiful backdrop. I mean, that beautiful scene that we've created looks like it's been created by a professional graphics artist. Now, of course, we can easily achieve this using the files within Minecraft Studio. If you're brand new to Minecraft Studio, we do have plenty of how-to tutorials on our YouTube channel as well. Let's hop on over to the PC and get started with building this beautiful background. So whenever we plug in, if you're brand new to Minecraft Studio, you will find the program itself loaded to the USB. You can just then simply install it on your computer from your normal USB port. From there, we want to open the program and go into the files. And the first thing we're going to do is build that background. So we're going to use this new function launched on the last USB called Background Builder, and it's really, really fun to use. You'll find your own way of how you like to create with this, but for me, I like to start with my landscape as it gives me a sort of position being mid-ground. I can then decorate around it for my foreground and also my backdrop as well. So I kind of want a snow scene that's a nice expansive area of snow that we can change up. So let's drag and drop our mid-ground on to the place like so. I'm going to stretch that down so it covers most of our page here. I'm working obviously on the A4 and rather than dragging it in, we can crop it if we decide to. I'm going to look for something that's quite straight across for the tree line here. So I'm not going to be too worried about how it essentially looks, but I quite like the waves in this, the sort of feeling of design in the composition. On to this, I'm thinking a nice tree line backdrop. Now we do have lots of options within structure and foliage, but again, I wanted more control over the initial look to the design. So rather than going in with, say, a whole tree line that's already been designed for us, let's choose these little trees here, nice sort of snowy, Christmassy trees, and let's resize them right down so they look like they are a nice sort of small tree right in the distance there. Okay, so I'm going to put that one down just to begin. I'm kind of getting my placements and kind of getting the ideas of what I want to work through on this particular design. Also, in my backdrop, I've included one of the sort of little barns and things. This gives us a great sense of perspective as well. So again, drag and drop him on. And let's just size that down as well, ever so slightly. So this is, you can already see how this scene is coming together. Now for me, the trees in the background are a little bit too bright. I'm kind of working with this idea that it's either very, very early in the morning or we're coming into dusk. So you get that kind of special kind of light. So these trees, let's tone them down by going into effects and let's just run through the hues until we find something that's a deeper green, bordering on a kind of grey. So just scrolling through until we find a colour we are really happy with. Don't want anything too bright or too icy. So let's just scroll through. Okay, we're getting into those purple tones there. So you see how now those trees match in with the colour palette of the background. What I also want to do is just drop down that saturation ever so slightly, so it's not as intense. Just take some of that colour out. I'm not being too precious about what actual numbers I'm using on the side here. I'm just going visually by eye until I'm happy with the design. And what we can also do is just add a tiny amount of blur just to take the crispness off the trees themselves, because they're in the background, they wouldn't be in sharp focus. Once I'm happy, we can then recreate this by either right-clicking, copy, and then paste. And that gives us another row of trees. Or we can use the buttons on top, copy and paste, to give us our line of trees. I'm going to move my building out just for a second, because of course, the trees wouldn't all be exactly the same size, they wouldn't be the same orientation. So instead of it looking like a repeating pattern, we want to change it up a little bit. So for this one, we can right click and flip it horizontally. So now it gives you a slightly different feel, and we can just eke down the size ever so slightly, like so. So it already looks different. The next little one just here, again, just change up the slides ever so slightly. So they're not like a carbon copy of each other. Copy and paste, and we're making sure each one we're pasting is just changed up a little bit. Smaller there, and copy, paste, and move it across to give us our full run of trees across that background there. Of course, we can size those up slightly just so they come off the page. Of course, with these end ones, if we choose to, if you want to keep it within the confines of the page itself, we can select crop, click on to make those grey boxes come up, and then just ease those in so they meet the side of the page. It's not necessary in this sense because you're not going to be creating anything, and it won't print anything that's outside the page. At this stage, I'm going to left click and drag and drop over the trees that we've created there. So all of the independent files, I'm going to tell the program to group those together. So now it's one tree line like so, which means we can size it right down and right up and independently of the rest of the page. Okay, so that gives us our backdrop. Let's move that snow back in. Let's bring those tree lines forwards so they sit over the snowy sort of mountainous kind of feel there. Drop those down ever so slightly. You just want to make sure you haven't got any white peeking out from behind the trees, like so. And then we can come back in with our building. Obviously, we want the building in front of the trees. So order and bring to the front. And now our wonderful little building will sit in front of those trees. So you're instantly getting that sense of depth and perspective. Of course, we can make the trees ever so slightly taller if we want to, and we can scale them as well. So you've got options there to really make this your own. This now needs let's go with the sky next, because I think it's easier to do that, and then we can work on the fine detail in the foreground. Back to our files, into skies. Again, a whole host of lovely wintry skies here to choose from. I think something quite, let's go something quite plain. Which one should we go for? Let's try this one, drag and drop. That's a nice sort of soft colouring like so. Drag it up to the top, and we want to come so it touches the tree line, but actually it's nice having this kind of glow around the trees where the colour kind of ombres down and filters out. Let's send that by right-clicking right to the back. And actually, let's just crop a few of these things so it just makes it a little bit easier to see. So we can click on our crop tool and crop in the skyline, just nipping it in ever so slightly and clicking OK. So that gives us our skyline. Now this is quite fun because at the moment, again, it's quite a pink tone. It's quite a bright tone. If we look to the foreground where we've got our kind of snow, the snow is quite dark. So we want to adjust the colouring so it all tonally matches. Again, we can go into effects. We can, again, scroll through either the rainbow or the hue. And this is quite fun. I mean, you might think, okay, well, I wouldn't be using these kind of colours in a skyline. But actually, if you look to designs where you might be including maybe Aurora Borealis, you know, that Northern Lights kind of feel, you get those wonderful green tones, you get those wonderful pink tones, and instantly it gives it a different dimension to your designs. But for me, I'm going to go something quite more sort of purpley rather than pink. And let's just have a little scroll through and change that hue down into maybe, scroll along, maybe some purple tones in this as well, or a navy tone. So you're instantly taking away the pinks that were there originally and making it feel more like, you know, the snow-laden sky, for example. Again, I'm going to drop that saturation down ever so slightly so you haven't got this sort of bright feel to it. Let's like so, and just drop that brightness down slightly as well. And let's just, because we've changed the colouring, you've now got this straight line where it was sort of filtering through. That's just because we've changed the feel of it and the different designs. So let's just drag that down again into an area where you get that sort of cutaway, if you like, gradient to it. Pop the trees back in. Now you've got sort of the hint of the hills and things behind the trees there, again, giving more sense of depth and perspective. And in with our little building there as well. So now you're looking at more of kind of snow-laden, kind of, not stormy sky, but it's about to snow in this kind of design. Similarly, for our foreground here, I want to drop the saturation down ever so slightly so we haven't got lots of different tones in sort of the green element here. So this just takes it down slightly. Let's just up the brightness a little bit so you get more of a, I want to say more of like a washed out feel. And it's just tonally matching your sky to your foreground there as well. I am going to crop just so it makes it easier to see where we're going with this. So we're selecting our crop tool, clicking on it, and then bringing those edges in just like so. So it's just for you guys at home so you can see, get more of a clear vision of where we're going with this. Okay. Now, let's look at this and think, okay, so we want to start working in this area here where we want to add in the detail. We've got our backdrop, we've got our skies, we've got everything going on there. So for this one, let's go back to our files. Let's tell our story. What story do we want to imply? Let's look for, in structures and foliage, let's look for that lovely gate. Because it's almost like an invitation then, isn't it? Come on in, view our wonderful scene that we've got going on. Again, we can scroll the gate down using those side buttons, those side boxes, like so. But isn't it interesting how by placing that gate in the foreground of our design, it instantly builds perspective. That house, that barn, that whatever it may be in the background is now in the backdrop. And you've got almost this sense of you're walking through the gate up to the barn like so. We need to ground the gate. So by grounding, what we mean is placing it in a sense and time. At the moment, it's kind of hovering above this white area that we've left on the screen itself. So again, let's go back to landscapes and let's find just a little bit of a snow flurry. Let's find something that we can ground this gate in so it makes it feel placed. Something like this one. Dragging and dropping it would work quite nicely. Again, we can stretch that so it's across the entirety of the page. We can change the orientation as well if you want more of a drift on one side, for example. And we can change the depth of the snow flurry too. So again, it's really up to you, but just grounding that gate in, making it feel like you've got the snow piled up in front of it. Let's click on the background and just stretch that down further so it meets that snow flurry like so. Okay, so now everything feels like it is grounded. I'm just going to tweak that a little bit. It's just these little adjustments and things to make sure you've got the full page covered, and maybe just eke that around so we haven't got such an incline on the one side. Okay, so that's giving us our basis for the foreground. When we come to cut this, we're going to be cutting along the bottom here. So this little white area doesn't matter too much. If you do want to fill it with something, you do have options. You can add another little snow flurry and you can add one of the different backgrounds. This is just giving you ideas on how to create a backdrop here. Furthermore, while this is really lovely, we want to design something whereby you've got more storytelling in the background that we can then bring to the foreground with our SVG cuts further down the line. So let's go into scene building for this as well, and into Winter Wanderings, into the scene building for that. And now we've got characters. Now we've got all sorts of stories we could be telling here. I thought it'd be fun to place some of our little trees into the design around the gate here. If we're making the exact carbon copy of what we've printed out, we've used a few snowdrops. So again, at the moment, yes, this doesn't sit within the scene because it's too big. So we're just going to use those boxes to scroll right down. And we're going to start placing our snowdrops around our gate. So copy and paste, drag and drop, obviously resize because they wouldn't all be the same size, flip them, again, giving them that different feel as well. Let's go in with a copy and paste for our little snowdrops because we want them on the other side just to mirror as well. Copy and paste. And again, just going to flip this one. Again, giving that different feel, overlapping them, overlaying them, so they would be just as they grow in nature as well. Copy and paste. Making sure we got the right one. Just edging down our snow flurry so it works. And making sure not everything's exactly in a row. You want them so they're a little bit apart. They're staggered almost, okay? This is starting to build in even more perspective. So now these snowdrops are the right size to work with our gate. Might be fun to play with this area here a little bit. So you've got that kind of wide space. Let's go and select, I mean, this is where you get lost in the actual making of Minecraft Studio, because you can keep going and going and going and adding and taking away. Landscapes, I think it's in. There's one which is a lovely little path, which kind of leads the eye. So again, dragging and dropping this wonderful little path design. We can line it up with the gate and it stretches all the way to that barn. It's quite a nice little thing here to include. Because now it's sitting in front of the gate, we can select it, right click it, order it, and send it backwards. We have to click through a few things because obviously at the moment it's recognizing the snowdrops as being in front of it. So a few little clicks to send it back behind the gate. If you've got sort of plan in mind, you can obviously load the files in order of how they would sit, but it's also nice to be able to work in this way, having a little play, changing things up, changing the order of things. There. So that last little one, popped it behind the gate. I've lined up that straight edge of the bottom with the gate itself. So now it feels like that little path is beginning at that gate. I'm just checking, I'm just lifting it and checking that this area here doesn't overlap the building, because then the story wouldn't make sense. You wouldn't have the path on the building itself. You want to keep it within the snow. And I want to check that there's no straight edges along here. Just ease that gate down a little bit. So that bottom run, if you like, of the gate is covering any little areas like that. Now it could be you want something that's a little bit more of a closed in feeling. Again, lots and lots of ways of achieving that. You want a more snuggly feel. We do have a whole host of trees, for example, which could come in right into the foreground. You know, around the snowdrops could be in front. You could size this so it's a lovely huge tree. Perhaps put a few little of the animals in there, little birds in there, just to decorate. So again, it's different ways of creating this same look. Also, it's worth having a look at scene building for winter wanderings, because we do have these wonderful branchy trees that could sit in front of the snowdrops, for example, be sized up. So it's almost like you're coming through a clearing into the area where you've got the driveway up to the gates. Or we do have the one with the canopy as well, which is lovely. If you want to then have a snuggled in feeling, it's nice to have those trees overlaying the scene itself. Obviously using those boxes just to change up the size and direction, changing it so the trees themselves sit in the snow of the foreground, obviously bring those snowdrops forward, and then you've got this snuggly feeling with the gate central to that as well. So again, different ways of creating that scene. For me personally, I love this sort of sense of this open feeling to the landscape, but again, totally up to you when you're in control of the files. I wanted to add in a few of the little trees here as well. These are very cute, but I do want to have my snowdrops in the foreground. So I'm just going to position that, size it until I'm happy. Don't ever worry about having designs coming over the edge, for example, because that's always really important. Again, that makes it feel more realistic. You know, you wouldn't have things exactly placed and then an area whereby it doesn't hang off the edge. Having things coming off the edge, even slightly, does ground them beautifully within the designs too. Let's copy and paste. So we're going to have a couple of these, almost like Christmas trees, aren't they? But I do want them in different orientations. So we can flip that horizontally to change the way it's facing, change the way it's standing as well, just by using the little circle at the top and tweaking that round. And then we can decorate the foreground by bringing those snowdrops forward. So bring to the front, finding each one of those. If you're finding you're struggling with your layers, come up to this little tab here, because you do often find if you're layering things on top of one another, this is an easy way of selecting certain elements. So let's just look to where we're at with the little snowdrops. That's that one. We can scroll through and find each one. That's that one. That's that one. So if we then see each one we're clicking, the little boxes are coming up round it. And that means when we go to order and bring to the front, that snowdrop's coming to the front now. And then this one I should be able to click, order, and also then bring to the front. So now our little snowdrop cluster is in front of our little pine trees there. Anything I do to one side, because I want this kind of feeling that it is not perfectly symmetrical, but to add balance, this side has this little pop of green, this little hint of green going on. So we want to continue that this side. It also then helps us ground in the grass we've got growing, and of course the little snowdrops there as well. So let's copy and paste one of our little trees in place. They always copy and paste loaded onto one another. So it's really worth just clicking on those and dragging them to the foreground. Just gonna layer that so it sits, but I want it quite large. And again, not worrying if elements of it come over the edge. Just sizing it up so it's not exactly the same as the other side. And again, tweaking that little direction too, so it's sitting in a different orientation, a different angle to the other trees as well. So it feels different because everything, you know, if this was real life, these trees would be different. And then I'm going to click and order, bring to the front this little snowdrop. So that's now going to sit nicely in front of my little Christmas tree, like so. Click, order, bring to the front. And there we've got another little Christmas tree. So if you were just crafting this in Minecraft Studio, this could be your finished scene. This could be your look. You could, of course, go into your files and maybe have, you know, one of your little snuffly hedgehogs, little Hector. Think about perspective, size him down so he could then sit within the design. Of course, you'd then have your snowdrops, right click, order, bring to the front, so he would then sit behind, so he's now grounded in place. That looks really sweet. So again, you can add characters here. Maybe if we go into the other element, so let's go back into a winter visit, into scene building, and into a Christmas visit, and into scene building again. We do have these little birdies, Cole and Cracker. Obviously loading onto the screen, drag and dropping, he is too big for our element. Because we're in control, we can size him down and he could be sat on the gate. He could be calling down to the hedgehog. He could be saying, "Hi, hello, what are you up to for Christmas? What are you doing today?" You know, we've got these options here as well. Similarly, he could be sat in the tree. So he could be off to one side. We could have one of our wonderful donkeys. He is so handsome. Just going to turn him so he feels like he's standing placed within this design. Again, just ease him down in size so he's more in keeping with the gate. Let's send him right to the back to begin with. And then you see the area is still highlighted, so you've still got him selected. We can then order and bring forward in stages, one layer at a time, until he's sitting just behind that gate as well. So bring forwards, order, bring forwards, and there he is, okay. But being our wonderful little donkey, let's have him so he's got his little nose over the front of the gate. So let's just position him so he's stood. Now he's behind. Because we've because we've designed him around the size, we've resized him, we want to copy and paste. So here's our little donkey. I'm going to take him off the scene at the moment because we're going to decoupage him on the page, okay? We're going to take just his head and have his head, so his head's poking over the gate. So to do that, we want to use our scissors on our file here. I'm going to scroll right in just to make it super, super easy. And we can go in even further, like so. And then the area that you would naturally cut away with your scissors to then decoupage, we're going to come in off the side of where we're essentially cutting and using just little clicks with the mouse, just follow the line around his cheek. Now, what's lovely about working with things like animals is they have lots and lots of fur. So this is a really forgiving technique. You're snipping into the areas here, and you know what? It doesn't matter if we don't follow the line exactly. It's just going to look like part of the fleur. It makes it really, really easy to do. So just clicking along, following the line of where his little nose and everything comes down, making sure we get his little mouth in there as well. And take your time doing this. It's quite therapeutic just clicking away at the mouse to create those little cut lines. Coming in and then around, following that curve. And same thing with the nose there as well. As I say, because you've got that fur, it doesn't matter too much if it's not exact. But this is just giving you options if you were just purely using the Minecraft Studio aspect of these USBs. Once we get to here, we're not having to worry about cutting out because you're simply following the line. So there's nothing against here that we need to snip round. So we can just come right out and around. So you don't even have to worry about trying to get around his ears or anything like that. That just makes it super easy. And then we just finish like so by joining the area that we have just worked with. Scrolling out, we can choose to either keep the inner, which is our little decoupage layer, or depending on what you're working on, keep the outer. For this, as we're making our decoupage layer, we want to keep our inner. And I'm going to scroll back out again so you can see the scene come together. We can drag and drop our little donkey's head over that design. So now his head is over the gate. Of course, he's got his little bird friend in the tree there. They're having a little three-way little conversation there. You could add in more animals. You could have some of the donkeys in the field, for example. But of course, because you've got the control over sizing those, they could sit right in the background, just like so, which would be really, really sweet. But for us, we're going to decorate with the SVG files. So it's going to look slightly different. So let's just get back to where we were. Of course, you can obviously save all of these as independent files as well. You can save them as Minecraft Studio files and come back in and change them up anytime you like to. So onto this, I felt it needed one final flourish to then just finish in the design, finishing the look. So I'm just going to come back into my winter scene, back into Background Builder, into Clouds and Snowfall, and let's go in with a whole flourish of snow as an overlay all the way over the whole of the scene. This wonderful, wonderful final effect, dragging it at the corners there to make sure it stretches across the whole of the landscape. I've noticed our little trees just need, I'm just moving that background up to make sure we haven't got that little white space. And then that overlay is the last thing that goes on because that will be in the foreground. Whenever you're adding your snow, make it the last thing that goes on. Really important that. Say we had the donkey and everything in the background, you then put the donkey on top, you wouldn't have the snow over the donkey. So you want your snow as the last thing. We can then print that off to allow us to start creating our finished pieces as well. So when you're printing, what I'd recommend is printing on a nice high quality paper. Something like our Pure Print, for example. One final thing that you can do before printing, you could choose to select everything and group it together. So now everything is one image. So if you were creating cards with just this, we can size it down, we can size it up, you know, the choice is yours. And whilst we're here doing a workshop, let's just show you something else we can do with that. So Digital Punch, basic shapes, a circle. We can choose to make that circle a particular size. So if you click onto it, you then get the elements down here for resizing. I need to change it to inches because that's how my brain works. But we could have a 6-inch circle and we could take a snapshot of this scene. So let's just size the scene so it works within the design. So I'm just sizing that down a little bit. Again, because we grouped everything then works together. We want to make sure we've got edge to edge colour. So just adjusting slightly here and there where we need to. Once we're happy with the placement, we can click on our circle and choose to keep the outer. So it would create a punch out, or choose to keep the inner. Wherever we go wrong, we can just click back and it instantly snaps back to as it was. You're never worried about choosing the wrong layer. Back into our digital punch, keep inner, move the punch away and delete. And now we've got a lovely little sort of circular design. Again, in effects, what we could always choose to do is fade those edges in if we wanted to, or better yet, let's go down to soften edges in a circular design and just bring that up until you start seeing the edges fade in. I'll do that again so you can see. Just fading in again to soften that and give it a really lovely Christmassy feel. Of course, at this stage, you can start creating the wreaths. We've got flowers on here, we've got branches on here, we've got eucalyptus on here. So it's different ways of showing you how to use that same image we created in a variety of different ways to create completely different looks, which I think, you know, it's almost like a little rabbit hole. You can have so much fun in just simply making. Let's find you a crescent of eucalyptus, for example. Let's use our circle to adjust and then size up and adjusting. So you see how you're creating this kind of feel around the design. Let's just take it down a little bit that way. So it's then layered exactly to the circle as well. So again, a different look to that design. Once again, if you wanted to, you could absolutely have the something like the stag from Winter Wanderings placed front and center. So you see now how you're building again a whole different look to this design. We could have florals onto the crescent of the eucalyptus there. Again, just giving you options on what you want to create with that same scene that we've already built. Remember, you can save it as Minecraft Studio file, and then you can change it in a number of different ways to create a number of different looks. If we're printing that just as a full-size page, we can then use, as I said, our pure print paper, print it out and decorate something like a home decor project, like you saw at the start, into the frame like so, to create a winter scene. So really, really lovely way of using the background builder and a few of the different elements on the Minecraft Studio USB. Now we're going to move on to crafting this with our SVG files as well. So the SVGs I have already printed out and cut out using my scan and cut. That's the background builder design that we've created using a Winter's Visit Minecraft Studio. We're now going to decorate that with some elements from the SVGs. So I'm just going to make sure that's in my frame nice and tight. Again, different ways of crafting with this. You can either choose to create on the frame itself without having the frame on, so you create on the paper first, or then add in your elements. Again, it's personal preference. But for me, I like to be able to see how the finished look is going to be. Now, the lovely thing about combining your Minecraft Studio file with your SVG is look how they then match. You've got your background built with something like these little pines. We can now layer those little pines on the foreground of your frame, as an example, to then build in this cohesive look, this idea that that world that we've made is escaping from the frame. Let's also include the SVG files for our handsome stag. So he's kind of like just surveying the scene. He's looking on, he's saying, okay, what are we doing today? What's going on here? And we're going to create a little bit of greenery around him, like so. And we're going to stick those to the outside of the frame to bring them together and make that feel like a whole cohesive look. What we're going to do with our stag, now the SVG files do come with decoupage layers as well. Again, completely personal preference. But if I'm building decoupage layers, I do like the idea of being in control of those layers as well. So sometimes I like to go a little bit off-piste. And at this stage, this becomes more like when you are die cutting than just purely going in with the SVG files. So sometimes I use the decoupage layers from the SVG. Sometimes I like to make my own as well. So no matter which one we're doing, we're going to grab our stags and we're going to round them off so they're all built in the same way. I'm going to start with the largest ball tool on a little bit of foam mat and just gently curve. We're not going too crazy here, it's just to give it a little bit of lift. Same with each one, just rounding those off, and our final one as well. I'm not worrying too much about the sort of legs or the antlers or anything like that. It's just to give that body a little bit of shape. So we're going to choose our base layer, one, and then we're going to look to our decoupage layers as well. As I say, there are decoupage files on the SVG. For me, I like mixing and matching the both, and also working more like a die cut file, a die cut design, and creating my own decoupage as well. So options there for you to do both. To create the decoupage, I'm looking to the SVG file cut out and saying, okay, what would be in the background? What would be in the foreground? The first layer, we're just cutting away those hind legs, those background legs there to start building in the layers. And then for the next layer, the final layer, repeat the same step that you've just done. So cut away any areas you have just cut away for a first off, so you know you're going to go exactly right. Your whole decoupage layers are all going to match. And then we look to it and think, okay, what's next? What would be further forward? So that darker area of the leg behind would be further behind. So again, just using our scissors and cutting away maybe something like the hind quarters here. Again, not cutting in straight lines, just moving the scissors all the time to give that sense of fur, to give that sense of ruffled, you know, three-dimensional. And then same thing with our stag's head, just coming in at the neck here. Again, ruffling it up. And then we've got our foreground like so, okay? To build our decoupage, we're going to use a little bit of Pinflair glue gel. I'm using mine in a syringe because I find it easier and I'm in more control. To add in the glue gel where there would be extra little bits of height. And then for areas like the feet and the antlers, for example, I'm going to change over to my tweezers and I'm going to come in with a little bit of bookbinding glue as well. It might be that you prefer using foam pads. That's absolutely fine. It's whatever you prefer to work with. The reason I do like to use Pinflair glue gel on the lifted parts is it feels a little bit more organic and you get a little bit more of an undulation of height rather than having everything at almost like a static height, you know, everything at the same layer when it comes to foam pads. So a little bit of glue out on my mat using my glue applicator just to brush the glue onto the tips of those hooves and the antlers as well. And for good measure, a little bit on the ears. So that first decoupage layer then sits on the base, like so, but it means areas like the little feet aren't going to be floating in mid-air. It means everything's then anchored, everything's supported, and you still get that sense of depth even with the legs because we cut away the background ones, but it gives you a more fullness to the areas that you've placed the Pinflair glue gel as well. Just the same thing again with the antlers, just lining those up where we've got the bookbinding glue, holding them so they sit, and that's giving us our decoupage layers. We're going to repeat that process just with our last layers here, giving it a little bit more of a curve for the last layer, using a smaller ball tool, going into those precise areas, and rounding off. I'm not pushing into the card. You don't want to push too hard because these are an outline cut. This is one solid piece of card. It hasn't had the cut line details to break the fibres of the paper. So we're just using gentle motion just to curl that paper around like so. Same thing again. We're going to take our tweezers and go in with a little bit of glue gel just on that large area there, and then come in with our bookbinding glue on our glue applicator. You don't want too much, so we don't want it to splodge out everywhere, so just brush away any excess like so. And then again, position that over the last layer you've put down, and make sure we just edge that little hoof into place and stick with the bookbinding glue. And same thing again, this time with the head of our deer. This is going to give you a really great sense of depth and perspective in the design. It adds in more design feature as well, and just creates this really sort of real life effect to your design. A little bit of bookbinding glue on the antlers this time, just gently picking up our decoupage stag and adding in that final layer, like so, easing that into place and making sure those little antlers then line up. Just changing where I'm holding it with the tweezers, so I can go in and make sure those antlers are grabbing. And there, we've got all of our decoupage done for our beautiful stag. And of course, if you wanted to do one of the other animals, perhaps the foxes, perhaps the donkeys, perhaps the lambs, whatever it may be, that's the same way. Just look to your file that you've cut out and look to where would be the background and choose your elements to bring forward like so. So our stag is going to be surrounded by our trees. So again, just looking for positioning. We haven't got a huge, great big frame around this, but it's just to give you option, an idea. We want to do it so you've got a little bit of the tree in the foreground, but remember what we were saying about overlapping, making it feel like everything is then positioned and real life. We've got this little area where the tree would be finished, like the end of the tree in real life. So let's just almost cover that up, if you like. Let's just settle that into the background by using another one of the cuts in the foreground. And that just makes everything feel like your deer is just there. He's just kind of wandered out of the wood, happened upon this gate, and the whole scene is playing out around him. Of course, we're going to add more detailing, but it's just on this side here to give you a little bit of a feel for what we're doing. Similarly, if you're worried about that little bit of blue showing, we can just go in and snip it down. There's nothing stopping us doing that as well. So 2 little trees. I think we could probably add in a little bit more. Let's go for one of our smaller trees too. Where have we got our little SVG cuts? You know, we could come in and almost like grow the tree, so you've got this kind of different feel, a little bit more greenery going in to the side. The options are of course up to you. This could be other branches coming off that same main tree. Again, just checking each time we place something, just checking for positioning against our stag and making sure we're happy. Once we're happy with the overall look, we can go ahead and glue. And what we need to be mindful of is gluing in areas whereby the tree is going to be attached to the mount of the frame itself. So just keeping that in mind as we work. Of course, similarly, like we did with the stag, we can manipulate the branches, fold them up, crease them, change them up to give them this feel of depth, to give them this texture as well. And then being mindful of placement where our glue goes. I think that's going to be good for now. Just then coming in and sticking those areas down too. Just holding it for a moment so that glue grabs. Remember, we're using our bookbinding glue from Pinflair. The reason why you use that is it's a nice low water content, which means it's not going to buckle the paper and the cardstock that we're working with. I think let's fill in a few of these little areas with the smaller trees, but I am just going to snip that little base off. So now it's become a branch rather than a full tree. Again, just simple snips like that really add into this whole you're in control over the overall finish and design. One little one there. Again, snipping away that base. Remember texturizing, just adding in that little curl to the edge of the branches and things too. A little bit of bookbinding glue to the bottom and just building up elements of the tree there, just making it a little bit more fuller. You've got quite a busy background going on with sort of the snowfall and all that sort of thing, so it's nice to give you that sort of feel of design like so. I'm gonna go in ahead and look for placement of the stag now. I'm gonna lean over because I don't want his hooves, if you like. I want him to be lined up with the design itself. So along the bottom there. So again, just checking placement, looking to see where he would be sat. So I know I can put a little bit of glue on his hindquarters and then bookbinding glue on his hooves as well. So going in with the pin flare, just on the one edge like so. And then a little bit of bookbinding glue just along. Of course, being mindful that that glue to the inside of the decoupage layers that we laid down is still going to be wet. It is still going to be drying. So just be gentle in that sense. Again, got that placement right. Making sure he's got enough of him held onto our die cuts and things so he's not kind of sagging into the background there. Let's go in with, I think, a die cut, an SVG cut to the background. So again, a little bit of shaping, just so he's got a little point of difference for his front legs against the background. Remember, we put these trees into the Mycraft Studio scene as well, so everything's then coordinating, everything's tying together. I'm going to lift him ever so slightly and have that tree behind. And also in front, layered with his hooves as well. Just for that point of difference, just for that feeling that he's nestled into his surroundings. It gives him a nice placement in design. I'm lining that up with his little hoof at the bottom and just holding until that glue grabs. We can also think about ways, if we want it balanced, if you don't want it sort of asymmetric and having just the one deer on the one side, we can put another character on the other side as well. Again, options at this stage. Totally up to you how you want your finished piece to look. I think we've got a little bit of area here. We've got a lot of green up here, but not much going on down this side. So I'd feel this needs a little bit of attention. So again, just lifting and tucking like so. I don't even mind that the stems of the branches and things coming over the edge of the frame. I think that gives it a nice feel as well. Let's just look to see how he would look with maybe his fawn on the other side. In a similar line of sense, you could have the fawn on the other side, or you could have it as an asymmetric design. Again, it's totally up to you. So if you were to place your fawn, you'd do exactly the same with your trees behind. I think that looks quite nice actually. I think we'll do that. Add in your fawn. So our fawn needs a few little decoupage layers too. I'm not going to add in this one, and I'll tell you for why. We've got one stag facing into the scene where you're kind of drawing the attention. And if we have our baby, although he's looking that way, he's angled to then face this way. So you've got this kind of nice balance between one side facing in and the other side facing in. If we were to put this fawn on, all of a sudden you've got everything facing this direction. So it draws the eye across to an area here rather than focusing the eye back to the center of the scene here. It's a little bit of an idea of how the eye views something, and then playing to that is adding into the strengths of your design. It's kind of just focusing the detailing in. So I think that's quite sweet. Anything you put down on one side, if you're going to use a design which is perhaps not completely symmetrical, but the idea is symmetrical, you want to then balance it with the same on the other side. So we're going to include the pine trees on the other side, but not as many, simply because your fawn is almost telling a different story. Your stag's kind of in the woods here, perhaps coming to see the fawn who is just sitting by the gate. So it's kind of like through the clearing, a little bit of detailing. We don't need as many trees on that side to work with the fawn. The one is more than enough for her. But we do need to shape, and we do need to add our decoupage layers as well. So let's grab 3 of our fawns and shape them using our ball tool on our foam mat. Same way we did before, shaping each one in the same way. The reason I like to shape all the decoupage elements together is if you're doing it at the same time, the likelihood is everything then matches as well. You've got the same pressure at the same time. You're not coming away from a project and then coming back to it. So everything is slightly different if you come back to it. Everything done at the same time, it means these all then work together. We're going to choose our little base layer for our fawn, and then same thing again. We're going to look to what would be in the background and what then needs to be in the foreground and brought forward. Now there isn't as much from a decoupage point of view as what you'd want to include with the stag. But we've got one little leggy there that would be in the background. And do you know what? Let's make her little face pop. Let's take away one of the ears as well. And that almost gives her that kind of angling round to the front. So that's our second layer. Using our glue. We haven't got any edges here like the antlers or the hooves or things like that. We've got more of a solid outline for this design, so we don't need to worry about including any bookbinding glue. We can just simply go in with the pin flare loaded up there and layer our gorgeous little fawn to her backdrop there, just squeezing that down until we're happy with the height, not pressing too hard. We don't want to lose that lovely roundness we've given her. And then for the final layer, same thing again. I'm not going to worry about the foot or anything like that because I'm only using her head for this layer. Let's go in and trim away the ear and then trim into her little face here as well. She's just delightful. She's so sweet, so petite and really lovely, you know, be it for a Christmas card or a home decor project like we're doing, or of course, you know, new baby cards. This could be any time of year. She is just delightful. A little bit of pin flare. And then just lifting and placing. Again, I'm using my tweezers to keep my fingers away from all that glue. Gives me a little bit more precision. Just gently tapping that into place. Like so, trying not to move the layers as I move her over to the project. Again, just scoping out placement, making sure we're happy with the layout before we commit to sticking. And once we are happy, going in, shaping that little tree, pulling those branches up, and then using a little bit of our bookbinding glue just on the background of that tree, as we did for the other side, to draw that all in as well. So being careful, you know, areas whereby you've got this idea of the straight branch or the straight trunk, sorry, going up, just angling it so it doesn't exactly follow the straight line of the mount, because in real life things aren't straight, are they? They are a little bit more wonky. And then, of course, our little fawn, just lifting her gently, of course, being aware that we've got the glue layers still drying on there. A little bit of glue for her, more centrally because we know she's going to sit within the frame there. Let's go ahead and stick, and then we can sort the layers out afterwards. So again, just looking and making sure we line her up with the bottom of the frame as well. And I might use my pokey tool for this, just sticking her in place and then adjusting her decoupage layers as well so they all line up beautifully, including a little head. So there we go. We've got our fawn on both sides. Now it could be you want to go all out. We could have beautiful florals from a winter's visit over the top. You could have all your different wreaths. We could create garlands. We could create frames. We could, similar to what you saw when we were looking at my craft studio, you know, you could come in and decorate this whole piece with detailing. Example, the Jolly Junipers make a lovely little wreath across the top, like so. Again, I'm just giving you options on how you would want to create your little frame design. It could be like that. We could come in with some of the berries, for example. You've got the red going on in there. Let's tone it down with a little bit of the white berries, the mistletoe, for example, through the center. So again, you can balance your design if you want to. Create that all the way around, create another side to balance it further, have almost like a swag of branches coming along the top. For me personally, I quite like the simplicity of having the animals at the back of the foreground and then having this lovely open space in the background to enjoy as well. But I do feel like it needs a little bit of Christmas sparkle. Excuse me, little dear, sorry. So let's look to elements whereby we could embellish this further. So things like, of course, we've got the snowfall in the background. That absolutely could do with some embellishment. But we do have things like snow along the gate, which we could enhance. And we could enhance the foreground of our fawns and things with a little bit of snow. So we're looking to Cadence Icy Snow Paste here. And this is a wonderful kind of textured paste. I'm going to use a palette knife to put it on with, but I'm just going to use the tiniest little amount. I'm going to come in areas and just the lightest touch, just to give you a textured feel to the gate, for example. Just the lightest touch, not all the way along. In fact, I might even change to a pokey tool, just so I'm getting right into those areas and just making it feel even more three-dimensional, even more realistic. You know, you've got those wonderful deers and things in the foreground. Just having a little bit of snow, just picking out areas. We're not going to go mad with this. It's just to give you an option. Come on, little thing. And then just smoothing it out, just to give you that lift, okay? So just in areas along the design, like so. Again, you may find it easier to work with the scene in the background flat. You know, again, it's personal preference. I do like to do this afterwards because I feel like it gives me the option to bring the scene together. It has this wonderful, like, grainy texture, almost like sand. It's just picking out little elements within the design there. Encouraging it off my pokey tool. Just use my finger in places. So it kind of, rather than sitting as a lump, I'm smoothing out just areas along. A little bit more, just along the top of that fence. I'm not going to do the whole fence. It's just to give you a feel for extra layers you could come in with if you wanted to. Like so. Anywhere where there might be snow piled up, along the bottom of the fence, for example. And let's just swap to a palette knife again, just because we're going in with bigger areas. Just changing that up on the other side of the fence in that snowfall, making that fence feel like really grounded into the overall look of the card. Anywhere where I've got straight lines, I'm just coming in with my finger, pushing that texture out and pulling it along as well. Even just the simplest of touch like so adds in a little bit of detailing. We're following the beautiful artwork that's already laid down and just adding to it like so. Furthermore, what we can do, if you've got them, again, you don't have to, it's just if you want to, we could come in with a few of the little Cadence Createx Decorative Sand and Stone. They're like little balls, but they're almost like little snowballs. And for this, let me just wipe off my palette knife. So you can see how you're taking your Minecraft Studio and your SVGs and really transforming it into more of a mixed media, okay? And going into those sort of realms. Just giving you the options there. A few little snowballs sprinkled into that snow text we put down, that wonderful sort of grainy feel. But by sticking the little snowballs into it, again, it's giving you that sense of detailing. Obviously, I'm going to need to tap the errant snowballs off, but scooping and sprinkling, adding that texture in just like so. It's picking up some of the highlights of along the top of the fence there, where we put the little grainy snow. And again, each project's going to end up being unique. Each one's going to be completely different because each one will have different areas where the snow falls. Each one will have different areas where the little balls sit as well. It's a lovely way of crafting this. Again, I'm not going to overladen it, but what we do need to do is add in a little bit of glitter. So we've got this wonderful snowfall in the background. We are going to employ the use of our glue applicator and a little bit more of our bookbinding glue just on my mat there. And this is fun. A little bit of glue, just dabbed in areas. Again, not going too mad, just over sort of the largest snowflakes that we're taking inspiration from the overlay, that snowfall overlay that we put down on the design as we were working with Minecraft Studio. This you probably would want to do before you stick it in the frame, but again, I like looking at the overall feel and seeing where we need those extra little elements. So a little bit of glue just to pick out elements of the snowflakes, even the ones that come over the barn, the ones that come in front of the trees. And then we can use one of our Cadence like glitter pens, glitter powder pen, and just puff the glitter precisely. And that's what I love about this. You're puffing the glitter just into areas where the glue is, like so. Of course, when the glue dries, it is going to dry clear, so you're not going to see that little white dot. All you'll be left with is this ever such delicate element of shimmer from the powder pen there. Just going to tap away the excess so it falls to the bottom of the frame. There we've got our finished project for the frame. Now, of course, there's nothing stopping you recreating that on an 8x8 and bringing that into a card as well. So again, just showing you options. It doesn't have to be home decor. You've got the whole scene. We've printed it out on Minecraft Studio. We've got an 8x8 card blank here and a matte layer. Whenever you're choosing colours for your matte layer, look to the imagery that you've created and pick out a colour. It's the easiest way to colour coordinate your mattes and layers. Pick out a colour. This one I've gone for this lovely, almost like a denim blue from Craftmaster range. Lovely linen texture there. Cut just slightly smaller than the background itself. Just gonna remove those edges and come in with the same scene. So the same scene that we've printed off from the Minecraft Studio for the frame. We've exactly the same image, just then snipped down to layer in with the matte layer. So we're literally sticking it to our card. Finger lift tape, tiny little border of the Minecraft Studio cardstock all the way around. We can repeat those same processes with the trees, with the animals, with the design, but I'll just grab a couple so you can see it's exactly the same process. A few little trees. Having those in the foreground really does make them jump from the background design that we've got going on. A few little smaller ones, but this time around, let's go in with a different character. Let's go in with our fox. And actually the fox is a really good example of colour coordination for this. So we're going to have it on the other side because our little fox is facing inwards on this card. Of course, being SVG files, we can flip them. You do have the reverse reflection as well. So again, you're in complete control. If you wanted it coming in from the other side, you can. But look at the colour coordination. This lovely tan of our fox instantly draws in our wonderful background for our buildings there. So again, colour coordination there. Let me grab a few little trees. So our fox is sitting pretty in the background, like so. And then the cubs, maybe on the other side, similar to the whole deer and fawn we've got going on the home decor project, but this time repeating the whole process just with our foxes too. I'll go ahead and quickly stick these. I'm not going to do the layers on this one like I've done in the frame, simply because if I was posting this, it makes it easier if it's a little bit flatter. But if you wanted to, there's nothing stopping you adding the decoupage exactly as we did with the stag. But from a time element, let's just go ahead and stick these, shaping our little foxy Noxie Gorgeous, lovely burnt orange tan colour to our fox there. Remember, layering those trees, looking to where her paws are. Don't be too worried if her tail and things come over the edge of the card. We've already discussed how that makes it feel lovely and real. Little tree in the foreground, again shaping. Oops. And going in with our glue. Just so she's grounded and part of that scene. And then same with our little foxes on the other side. A little bit of glue, like so. Again, checking the height to make sure we're not having it exactly the same height as the other side there. Shaping our fox cubs, rounding them off. Oops. I'll get those in a minute. Tweezers. Fox cubs to the foreground, again overlapping so they don't sit exactly on the fence post. And just bringing them down so they come over the edge. Like so, a little bit more grounding. Shaping another one of the little trees. And to finish, you could of course include the elements like we did on the frame with the Cadence Icy Snow paste and of course the glitter in the snow. But again, same project, same Minecraft Studio background, different foreground and different utilisation. So this time with a card design too. Two different options, two different ways of using. I hope to see lots of your lovely projects in our Facebook group, Highlight Crafts Official, and we look forward to seeing you next time for another workshop. Thank you very much for joining us. Bye-bye.
If you want to see more from Highlight Crafts, make sure you click the like button, subscribe by clicking the subscribe button below, and click the bell icon to receive notifications of all of our future content. You can also click here to see our latest video, or click here to see more videos like this one.